There are 4 generations at the moment of musicians in my family. My father was Frank Downs, a well-known horn player who played in the RAF Central Band during World War II, and afterwards with the Liverpool Philharmonic Orchestra, the CBSO, and the BBC Midland Light Orchestra, after which he was appointed Head of Orchestral Studies at Birmingham School of Music, which became Birmingham Conservatoire. His brother was Herbert Downs, Principal Viola in the Philharmonia Orchestra. The next generation was me, followed by our daughters Anna and Paula, both of whom have become very celebrated musicians. I cannot, however, claim more than half of the credit for this, because my wife Cynthia is a superb violist and teacher herself. The generation of our grandchildren promises lots. Both of our grandsons are gifted saxophonists. One of our granddaughters plays beautifully on the piano, harp and violin, while her 6-year-old sister is showing great promise. I started singing at a very early age when I found that I could make good money by singing pieces like Over the Wings of a Dove, Green Sleeves and Blow the Wind Southerly to relatives and neighbours. I then was asked by my music teacher at school to become a founder member of the choir which she was forming, the Midland Boys Singers. We proceeded to sing in lots of Catholic services, to my father's horror, which were in those days conducted in Latin. We sang a different proper of the Mass each week, and therefore learned all sorts of different plain songs in a variety of modes. I later came to realise how similar the music of the West was, at this time, to other music from around the world, such as the Middle East and India. These experiences as a singer came to fruition when I won a choral scholarship to St John's College, Cambridge, where I was introduced to a whole new repertoire of Renaissance, Tudor and Victorian church music. After leaving Cambridge, I went to the Royal College of Music, where I had the honour to study with Herbert Howells. At the same time, I did some teaching at Thames Valley Grammar School, and then heard that there was a new post in theory teaching at the Birmingham School of Music. The post would have a responsibility for developing composition amongst the students. Over the next number of years, I held many workshops and invited composers in to give masterclasses. Around 1982, I was given the job of introducing composition into the school as a second study subject, and in 1989 I was able to introduce it as a first study subject. The Birmingham School of Music thus became the first college of its kind to offer composition as a major study. In 1992, the principal of Birmingham Conservatoire, Kevin Thompson, asked me to set up a School of Composition and Creative Studies within the college so that all students, whatever their principal subjects, could take as options a wide variety of music from around the world, including learning to play gamelan on one or both of our Javanese or Balinese orchestras, Indian ragas, African drumming, European folk music or jazz. The composers in particular, including me, found this to be a great influence on the development of their own styles. In 1974, I wrote my Christmas cantata for the choir and orchestra of Thames Valley Grammar School. I had to tailor-make the parts to suit the abilities of the students, so the string parts are much simpler than the other instruments. In 1981, I was commissioned to write a children's opera for the Rugby Schools Music Association. Odysseus and the Cyclops was performed by over 200 children from all over the Rugby Authority in the Temple Speech Room of Rugby School. Then in 2003 and 2005, I was commissioned by Symphony Hall Birmingham to collaborate with their poet-in-residence, Julie Bowden, to write Songs of Autumn, which was performed by 1,200 children from Birmingham schools with players from the CBSO, all conducted by Geoffrey Skidmore, and Songs of the Skies, which was paid for by British Airways, and it was premiered by, again, 1,200 children with the Central England Ensemble, conducted by me. My links with the Czech Philharmonic Orchestra were formed during the mid-1990s, when I was commissioned by the University of New Mexico in the USA to compose a work for horn octet to be performed in 1995 as part of a horn symposium being led by the university at that time. Cynthia and I attended the premiere of my sonata for 8 horns on the 29th of March 1995. The first horn part was played by a visiting professor of horn from the Czech Philharmonic Orchestra, Stanislav Suchanek. Stanislav was taken with the piece and took it back to Prague with him and arranged a performance with the other horn players in the orchestra. This took place at the International Horn Class 97 at Nové Strásecí on the 2nd of August 1997, with further performances in the Suk Hall of the Rudolfinum in Prague, as well as all over the Czech Republic, in Germany and in the UK. The horns from the orchestra decided to make a CD including this work. The CD, entitled Czech Philharmonic Horns, led to a new project in which I composed a concerto for 4 horns and symphony orchestra. This was premiered in the Dvořák Hall of the Rudolfinum in Prague by Radek Babarák, Stanislav Suchanek, Ondřej Vrabec and Zdeněk Zdivoký, with the Czech Philharmonic Orchestra, conducted by Vladimír Válek on the 28th of February and the 1st of March 2002. The concerto was then recorded for Czech radio by the same soloists with Czech Radio Orchestra. After my spinal injury in 2009 and resulting paraplegia caused by medical negligence, we were unable to travel to Prague to pursue further performances. I did receive compensation, partly to pay for care and partly to compensate for my loss of direct contact with performers. I decided to use a portion of this compensation to pay for recordings to be made by top artists. The first one to occur to me was to get my orchestral symphonies and overtures recorded by a major orchestra. My favourite orchestra was the Czech Philharmonic Orchestra, so I conducted Ondřej Vrabec, who by now was principal horn and principal guest conductor of the Czech Philharmonic Orchestra, to ask him whether they would consider making these recordings, and if so, what would they cost. I was thrilled with their positive reaction, and in due course a recording was made. I was stuck at home, fortunately during the summer, and allowed the nature all around in the garden to inspire me. I also used my imagination to remember my favourite local landscapes. The lack of normal pollution levels made the air so clean and balmy that the whole effect was quite intoxicating. The 5 movements of the symphony flowed out quite easily. My wife suggested that the first movement gave the impression of nature and mankind fighting a battle, and posited the title, Nature Fights Back. The other movements suggest that the battle is finally won by nature.